We're holding page 90, bottom paragraph. The Chovos HaLevavos had spoken about that if you go and you see a water wheel which draws water and irrigates a field or a garden, and the way you see the way it's constructed, no one would say, although it's something which may be very basic and very primitive, no one would say for a moment it happened by itself. There was a craftsman who actually put it together. And as a result of that, it operates as it operates. So he says, if the small wheel, he refers to hagalgal hakoton, something which is so insignificant, no one could accept under any circumstance, anybody of any semblance of intelligence, that happened by itself. But yet, the galgal hagodol, Earth with all the planets and everything contained within it, that happened by itself. It's mikra, Big Bang. I mean, he says, it's absurd. Anybody who has any semblance of intelligence, he says, how could he even consider saying such a thing? Something of no significance, impossible. Something which is the ultimate, that came about by itself. Right? Go speak to the university professors. Big Bang theory. You want to market something. It's a little matchbox. You strike it. After you strike the match, 20 ounces of gold, and it sells for $5. Who's not going to buy it? Try to convince the world. That's what's going to happen. Not that Big Bang. You'd be arrested for false advertising. Okay. He says, anything which comes about without intending whatsoever, without any intention, planning, and it happens by itself, lo yimotze bem simin lechochma v'yicholes. Says something else. A person has to prepare a report. And normally it takes days and endless hours to prepare this report, to research it. And the person he's presenting to is a person who understands whether something is done right or not. And the person put in 3 hours. So the employer or the one who he's supposed to present says, you're insulting my intelligence. You want me to consider this as something of value? It's clear. You didn't put in the time to do your research, to research what had to be researched, to present a report. He says it's known anything of value, it takes a tremendous amount of planning and developing for it to have and it's recognized in whatever you see, the end product. So if you have the end product, which is existence, which is the level of genius, it borders on the infinite. There was no one behind it who planned it, every aspect of what came about. He says, proof of the pudding is, person spills out a bottle of ink on an unblotted piece of paper. So what do you have? You have a splotch of ink. And as a result of this, you no longer can write on that piece of paper straight lines or anything which is readable, which is legible. But if a person brings before you something that's written in a specific order, unless a quill that was sharpened and cut to the point where you see from the strokes, you're able to see what kind of quill was used, the one who had written it is as a calligrapher, and so on and so forth. Would anybody say that this came about, that ink poured out on the paper, spilled out, and that's how this came about, right? We'd immediately dismiss the person. It's famous Moshel given by Rabbi Chonon in the Kovetz Maimorim. There was a person, he had a phenomenal collection of the masters. And he invites the the most expert in masters, to his home, and he wants to show him his collection. And he shows him a painting which he never saw before. And this person knows quality. And it's a Rembrandt, and it has underneath a plaque, Rembrandt. It says the year, so on and so forth. He says, I'm not aware this even existed. And he says, all the Rembrandts I've ever seen don't even compare to the genius that I see in this Rembrandt. She said, I want to tell you a secret. It's not a Rembrandt, and I'll tell you how it happened. He says, about 6 years ago, I had a piece of parchment on my paper, on my table, canvas on my paper, had vials of paint. The window was open, and there was a hurricane storm brewing, and I forgot to close the window. I came next morning. All the vials were spilled over, knocked over, and this is the painting. That's how it happened. Whatever, maybe he signed it too. That's how it came about. He says, impossible. He says, for my expertise of what genius is, the strokes, the color, coordination, everything, this is beyond anything I've ever seen. He's speaking to the expert. He's speaking to a person who understands. So Ruchanan says, and what about the world, existence, creation? Is it less than that? It's endlessly time more than that. And yet you say, it happened by itself. Big Bang. Mikra. But people consider that. That's what's almost not believable. Something like this, they wouldn't consider. Something like that, they would consider. Go ahead. That's what we discussed yesterday. That's the DNA. There was the DNA in the material initially. Yeah, but it all emanated from that matter that he. But then you have to then you have to say a day doesn't mean 24 hours. A day means a million years or billion, whatever it means. There was a book put out many years ago by there was an organization called the Orthodox Scientists. It was an international organization. No, not Schroeder. His name was Cecil something. His name Cyril Dome. Cyril Dome was his name. He put out the book. He was a scientist, and he put out this book. I forgot what it was called. I have it at home, and he has all various articles reconcile evolution with the Big Bang with Torah. And one of the theories is that a day is not 24 hours, and God set it in motion, and it evolved over billions of years. So therefore, with all the carbon testing, there's no contradiction. Carbon testing and creation. Of course, a day doesn't mean 24 hours, but it's clear from the Gemara. In Chagiga, a day means 24 hours from Chazal. The day of creation was a 24-hour day. So there, it's like, in the abstract, trying to reconcile the two. Fast forward.
Exactly. That when you measure it with carbon testing, it appears as
Right, 100%. No, there's a famous theory. There's a famous theory of the Malbim. You know, the Great Flood. The world was traumatized. Now, first, what was the Great Flood? It wasn't just ordinary water. The Gemara says it was hot and it was sulfuric. So the world was traumatized. So the pressure and the trauma to the world was the equivalent, could have been billions of years. So whatever was found afterwards was prematurely aged at a level which is not to be understood. Therefore, you find fossils or whatever it may be, which seems to be billions of years old, although that's not the case. Firstly, the species pre-Mabul were a different dimension of species than post-Mabul. Like people lived 800 years, 900 years. Afterwards, people lived ordinary lifespans. The dimension of animals, there were giants. Post-Mabul, there were no giants any longer. So the species themselves were a different dimension of species. Like when we went to Eretz Yisrael, the Meraglim, they brought back fruits were of abnormal size. So just as the fruits were abnormal size, I mean the people were of abnormal, but it wasn't abnormal. It was a different dimension of creation. So whatever we find whether it's dinosaurs or whatever it is earlier, they were species, but they were magnified species. That's what they were. Afterwards, the world was minimized. So therefore, and aged is because of the trauma which came about as a result of the Great Flood. This is the Malbim. That the Gemara says.